And I want to, kind of set this up because our next speaker is this is a woman who actually I met on Clubhouse as well. And just listening to her and thinking, wow, man, she's got a lot of knowledge here. And then reading her bio and knowing that, she started as an actor and then she started working with tech companies. And she's also an active angel investor. Man, she's got such an incredible bio. She's very well educated, I will tell you that, magna cum laude graduate. But what I think is so interesting is that she kind of blends two perspectives here, which is a little unusual in that she is a Tony Robbins Masters Certified trainer, but she's also a consciousness educator. And if you know Tony Robbins, it's all about, goals, intentions, and taking action, right? Moving forward. And then you blend that with the consciousness, and that's a little bit more of like a deep dive and really getting into that transformation. So I love that she's got kind of marrying those two perspectives. Also, she is an entrepreneur, clearly, and she is a mom. And so she really knows a lot about juggling family, juggling those responsibilities and being present to your family. So I asked her to be here today to kind of walk us through being an entrepreneur, juggling everything, and really building a business and what that's like. So welcome, Celina Belizan. Hi.
Hi, thank you so much.
Oh, absolutely. I'm so glad you're here. And I'm so glad I was able to connect with you on Clubhouse. I was talking to Linda about that as well. It was like, gosh, Clubhouse has been great for just building these connections and getting to know people because you can talk with everybody and hear everybody, rather than just social media posts.
Yes.
It's a little different. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. It's a bizarre experience, isn't it?
It's like dropping in on a podcast and then being able to interact with everybody, right?
Yes, exactly.
And knowing
Is my sound okay?
Pardon me?
Is my sound okay?
Yeah, it's fine.
Okay, because speaking of juggling, I think I just burnt like 2,000 calories trying to figure out a setup because we're on vacation with both sides of my family, and
I'm so well. I know, and I know you've been really busy. I know you had some family issues that were going on. I'm sorry for that. I know that's been hard and took your time away. And then you had to go to Vegas, like a quick whirlwind business trip to Vegas. So yeah, no, this is working. And I'm so glad that you were able to be here with us because when we first talked about doing this interview, we were talking about really just being female entrepreneurs and moms and juggling things. And that's why I wanted to bring you on here because I think, first of all, I think you get it. I think you're so real and raw about it. And I think that women, I mentioned this earlier, is that women tend to lone wolf it. We think we can multitask everything, and yet something eventually kind of gives. And I'm a single mom and I raised 4 kids and started my own business because I want to be present to them. I thought, you know what, I want to be there. I want to be home for them. How am I going to do this? And entrepreneurship was really my way of doing it. And it was, it wasn't always easy because I think there's a tremendous amount of mom guilt that kind of comes in. So I would love for you to speak a little bit about kind of, your journey as an entrepreneur first and how you're juggling that. And then I want to get into really how you blend really, transformation with, as a Tony Robbins certified coach and the consciousness education that you do as well. I'd love to get into that. So let's first talk about, entrepreneurship and how you started and like, oh, I'm going to build this business. I'm going to get going. And yet you're a mom. You got some young kids at home.
Sure. So with entrepreneurship, I think that for me, very much some of the traits that make us women that can juggle things and do all these different things, earlier in life, they're called ADD. You know what I mean? So it's like you're doing 40 different things and shiny object syndrome, and you've got amazing ideas about things. I mean, don't ask me to finish them, but I've got amazing ideas.
Oh my God, that's so true. Yeah. Finish them? No, I just start them.
I have a spreadsheet. If anyone's looking for a startup idea, I have a spreadsheet of them. I'm not the right person to execute on those, but someone should be. And so for me, entrepreneurship was just a great way to, be able to do lots of different things. lots of different roles, challenged myself. I need to be challenged all the time or I get bored. So there's two different things. And I think this is really hard for people when they're starting out and everyone talks about your purpose and your passion and all of that. And it used to make me so crazy because people would say, once you know exactly what you want to do, you're going to be unstoppable. Like, thank you, Captain Obvious. Like, tell me what that is. I'd like to know, and when you figure it out, great, and so if you don't have that exact passion that you're doing, you can meet that need in a way by what you're doing and the way you're doing it. So if something's really challenging and the learning curve is really steep, that will also meet that need to be really believing in what you're doing. So entrepreneurship was a great fit for me. And as I worked on different sides of the table, so first I, was a founding member of actually a brick and mortar in New York City, if you can imagine, back in the day when we raised money for actual places that you could go, touch, and feel.
So different.
And then as time went on, I went back to business school, and then I worked in venture capital, and then I took a job for one of the teams that we worked with. And what I realized, the link between all of those things, is that I just really like to get into other people's heads, figure out what they would do, and then act strategically accordingly. And so when I started the whole Tony Robbins thing, my idea was not to be a coach. It was to be better at being a practical psychologist. I wanted to really understand what drives people. And because I also I love the fluff, but I really need at the end of the day to tie it to something that is tangible.
Yeah.
I love frameworks. I'm an econ major, so I also love frameworks. And so I really liked the idea of analyzing behavior in a way that I could, pull this lever a little bit, turn up this dial a little bit, try something, test it, discard it, or double down. And so that really helps me with it. And I went very much into, when you work at a startup, you wear all hats, but I would say that what I excelled at was when I needed to figure out whether it was figuring out how to get a new customer or figuring out a partnership and how to make the potential partner think it was their idea to do the partnership and those types of things.
It's tricky. Oh, it's your idea. Great. That's takes some finesse on that one.
Exactly. And, we do it for everything, whether it's relationships, when that sounds really manipulative, but it's tapping into what someone really needs, even if they don't know that they need it, and giving them a way to then solve that problem using your product or service. And so
that's true. And it does, what, like you said, it in relationships, not just personal relationships, but like you're saying, in sales relationships, in business relationships, it's kind of mirroring that person, that personality. And so you can actually match and tap into what is it that they need. So you can kind of fill that void in a sense.
Right. And I actually am a huge believer in being strategic in personal relationships as well. And the reason for that is that, we think it's okay for some reason to sit around and anticipate our customers' needs and to, put things into boxes with ribbons on them in a way that gets us what we want. But we're not taught to do that, as children. We're not taught to do that as teenagers, and we're not taught to do that in relationships. And ultimately, it's not manipulative. It's what outcome do you want, and what is the best way to get there? Because usually the things that we want, we blow ourselves up in the process of getting there. And so when it comes to our relationships, we're so set on being right or proving our point. And it's not about necessarily not proving our point, but it's understanding what is going on in somebody's mind, in somebody's body, how their emotions work, so that you can create a scenario in which you can even express yourself and be listened to. And so my training, if you will, that really, really, really moved the needle for me in that way was after I had kids, because Like you were saying, when you so beautifully introduced me, thank you. I, when you're a party of one, sure, set a goal, put it on your whiteboard.
Yep.
You either do what you need to do or you don't.
Yep.
You know,
It's black and white. It's do or not, right?
Exactly. You know, I always say to people that, you know, oh, Tony Robbins, like whatever they want to say. I'm like, here's the deal. If you do everything he tells you to do, you will have all the things that you want. The thing is that you're not going to, you know, we don't.
Well, why is that? Right?
Like
so many times people hire coaches. I mean, I was talking earlier about this with someone, with Linda, actually, that, you know, we can be led to something, or we hire how many courses have people bought and they just sit there and you never even, I have courses that I don't even know what my login is. I paid for them, but I never even logged into them. Right.
I know.
And then, okay. And then I'm kind of like, it doesn't serve my purpose anymore. I'm on to something else. But why is that? We know that. How many books are out there? How many seminars, conferences? Why don't we?
Well, so when I got really deep into understanding how it all works, it was not for myself. And later we'll tie back around why I wasn't able to do it for myself. But it was when, you know, so I was already a Tony Robbins, probably a master certified coach. And then I was pregnant and I was running a international yoga brand. And I had it all mapped out. You know, I'm going to have this like Buddha baby. Everything's going to go perfect. I just taken a job as CEO of this company. I was going to carry her around all over Europe to visit the centers. And we were just going to, you know, go work. And maybe I'd write a blog too while I was at it. We're all white, of course. She would never cry, you know, the whole deal.
Oh yeah.
And next thing you know, my water breaks at 28 weeks and I have a baby that's 2 pounds. Okay. And she was in the hospital for 100 days. And the way that, you know, I later learned, the way that my ego manifests is to learn and study. That's why I have all those degrees and certifications. It's because when I don't know what else to do, I go research and I study and I study and I study. And so much happened in the next couple of years, which we won't get into, but it was one thing after another. So then I had to learn about trauma and attachment theory, and then about how the brain works. And, you know, her brain was formed in an incubator. That's, you know, she was in there for 100 days. And so trying to understand, you know, what I could do if and when I needed to intervene. I became a neurofeedback practitioner. I learned about, you name it, I've got the devices. And so in that process, I also decided to be a parenting expert. And none of that really worked in my house either. And then I started studying conscious parenting, which is really just a hook for when you're like, you know, on your knees and need to go deeper. Yeah. There's few things in life that will get us there. Parenting is definitely one of them for a lot of people.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. It changes the game. It absolutely, it breaks you. It makes you kind of get rid of that ego, push it aside, breaks you and go, okay, really, what's the purpose here? And what's really important? And that's the thing, like you said, it takes you to your knees.
Right. And the thing is, you know, we leave things, right? So our relationship's not working. We can leave our relationship. We can move to a different city. We can leave our families. We can change our religion. We can change our gender. But most people are not going to leave their children. And so it very much becomes this mirror that you are forced to, like you said, ask what the heck is really going on here? Because this is not matching up here. And so I studied many years, actually with Dr. Shafali, and she and some other teachers really helped me to understand how in Eastern wisdom, we think about ego and the layers of self. Simultaneously, I was learning all about the brain of these children and what happens to our brains, to our bodies when we are in reaction. And in that process, it was like, oh my gosh, because forget my kids, I don't even know what's going on.
Right.
You know, I don't even, you know, so back to your initial question, why don't we do all those things that we know that we should do? Yeah. And it's because the part of us that knows that we should do it is not available when we are not doing it. Because, so if you think about a child, right? So, think about a 2-year-old, and they are going bananas because you peeled the banana the wrong way. I mean, forget 2-year-old, my 5-year-old does this still. If I peel the banana the wrong way and she's exhausted, like, we got ourselves a problem.
Yep.
I can't sit down with her and say, hey, Christy, it's okay because the banana is the same. Okay, now you're being ridiculous. You're not thinking, look, this banana is the same. Does it taste? She's like,
we're trying to fit up our mold. We're trying to put a square peg in a round hole. And it's like, wait a minute.
Right, exactly. And so what we do with children is we get them back online. Mm-hmm. We have all these tactics to get our children back online, but we are no different than them. We have to be online. We have to be using a certain part of our brain when we are trying to do things. So you and I can sit around here and talk about all the things we're going to do, but all of those theories rely on our thinking brains being available at the time that we're going to do them. Yeah. And instead, what's really available, especially if it's something new, or especially if it's something, if you have a course that's how to be, take your business to, I don't know what, our brains are not wired to go do new things. Our brains are wired to be efficient. Mm-hmm. And so when you go to do those things, there's a 6-year-old, a 7-year-old, an 8-year-old, a 4-year-old, all not conscious, that are like, uh-oh, Kim's going to do something different again. Let's get her out of there. She's going to, you remember that day in dance class when, Helen told her that she was like turning wrong in front of everybody. Let's get her out of here. Let's get her out of here. So next thing you know, and the way that I speak about ego that I love is that what happens is, because the adult Kim is not available, mm-hmm. someone's going to come to the 4, 5, 6, 7, 8-year-old's rescue, and it's your ego. So your ego might come, my ego might come in a different way than yours, but it can be anything from procrastination. Let's go eat a cookie. Let's take a nap. Those are, and it believes that it's protecting you.
Oh yeah. So true. So true. Because it's designed to protect us, right?
Exactly.
But that's the very thing that we have to kind of break through and go, so do you think you have to go all the way back and do a deep dive and think, God, where is this pattern coming from? Did it start at 5?
I don't. And I'll tell you why. Because I tried that for so long and worked with people on that for so long. And what I found was that you can know why you're that way. You can know that you're freaking out is not making sense. You can know that you're reacting to something that's not in front of you, that's something that comes from a long time, but it doesn't actually change the way you feel in the moment. Not for everything. I think sometimes it works, and by all means, knock yourself out. But what I really love, what I kind of felt like was this like secret that I discovered, and everyone just has those moments, that for me, it was that I didn't need to know why. And what I was doing, we're conditioned like this. I have a feeling, I look around. So I'm sitting here and all of a sudden it's literally happened to me. I'm sitting in my office that is like my happy place, not this one. This is a makeshift place that does not make me happy. In my happy place. And I get anxious. Okay. So, did I forget to do something? Did the girls get lunch? Who's picking them up? Is somebody mad at me? All of this. So we find something on the outside. But what I realized is that most of the time it has absolutely nothing to do with something that is available in that moment in your brain. So you're looking, you're searching, you're filing, and then that's why, you go to the grocery store and you've got something going on, and you've been with the person who's like, do you see the way that she looked at me? And you're like, who? Or vice versa. You feel that way. You're like, why is everyone treating me this way? No, you're just going to find something on the outside to match what's going on the inside. Right. And so what I really started to implement in such a methodical way with myself and then with other people is recognizing that what is true is that for whatever reason you have been triggered, your children inside of you, all those, whatever reason you've been triggered. Yeah. And the only way, once you're triggered and you go into reaction, your ego will come to help you. But your poor ego, who's trying so freaking hard, is using the same defense mechanisms that it used when you were that 6-year-old, 8-year-old, 7-year-old child. And so it comes in with things like, tell them to screw off, or you're not going to take this. And what's even worse is that if you really, really notice what you're doing, you are taking all of those wounds with you. You are not in the present moment. So as an example, if, since we're talking to moms, your kid doesn't like your food, you're exhausted, you spent the whole day doing this, they barely eat it, and then go and grab something, and then you try to say something and someone talks to you like really rudely. Mm-hmm. If you were really in the present moment, you would just be like, yeah, the kid could use some manners. Next time I won't cook this. But instead, it's like, after everything I do for this family, after everything I've sacrificed for you, know what? Go ask your father. You would starve to death with your father. Boom, 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 boom. But we are reacting to a lifetime of feeling like we were wronged. So victim is a huge manifestation of the ego. Where you're like, everything I do for, or so
that victim comes in so clearly and so quickly, I think, for so many people, and derails us. No matter what we're doing, like, I know, like building a business and early on and going, oh my gosh, but I really want to be at their baseball game, or I really want to go to this dance thing, or I want to, and trying to juggle all those things and then going, doesn't matter. Like, I tried to be there. I tried to be here. I'm trying to be, but trying to be everywhere. And then at some point you just go, oh, and then you kind of do retreat, and you get, but also you kind of get to, like, for me, I know I would get defensive and kind of take it out. I'm like, really? Like, okay, well, I tried to do this, right? So that defensive became, because that was my go-to. It was like, I'm going to protect myself with this, right?
Oh, yeah.
Not serving a purpose at all, and just kind of holding back, right?
Yeah. I mean, protector is a huge one. Avoider, denier, depressed, lazy. I mean, all of them. And so back to your question about not having to know what actually caused it. Mm-hmm. It's incredibly empowering once you realize, like, I'm in protection mode. Don't know why. Don't try to know why, because in that moment, you're just going to go into that, your amygdala is firing. Yeah. You're going into fight, flight, freeze. You're going straight into that, and so in that moment, it's just noticing it and starting to create a new neural pathway, starting to create, and a big part of that is to realize that what you're trying to do is get your ego to go back to sleep. Thank you so much. We're good. The adult version of me is here. So it's not about telling, that you're wrong, because a lot of those things are like, what if it weren't true? It's not true. You idiot, go for a run.
Oh my God, you can get your mind going. I've done that. You can start spiraling and going down that rabbit hole where you're just like, and then this, and then this, and then this, and then this. And I love that you say that you don't have to go back and do, because it's like, oh my God. Like, when you start to hear, I remember years ago, you say, oh, there's so many different layers to the onion. You have to keep going back. And I'm like, are you kidding? Like, I'll never get anything done. I could spend a whole lifetime doing that. Forget it. If I go back and visit every little wound that happened and what my triggers are, I'm not going to get anywhere in life. Right. And so I love hearing that it's not necessary. And I think that's one of the things that I love so much about Tony Robbins training, and even the consciousness idea, is that it's like being present to it and recognizing those triggers. And what I know now is that I will do this thing and I'll say, okay, I recognize that. What is this serving me? And I'm such a visual person that I kind of go, I look at it and I go, and I put it in my fist. I'm like, is this serving me right now? Like I'm procrastinating. And so I'll be, is this serving me? And what's the purpose of that? And then I just go, you know what? You're not serving me. Thanks so much. I recognize you. And then I kind of like blow it off my hand, because I have, for me, I have to bring in another sense to it to
I
make
like
it,
that.
to get rid of it,
Yes.
But I love this because I think this is how many times I see a lot of, I have a lot of entrepreneurs that are, either they've been in corporate and they're starting their own businesses, right? But they get tripped up because they're so used to the corporate and they're familiar. They've got a routine, right? So they know they do this, they've got the sitter coming, they go and they blah, 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 and then they come home. Things have changed because of COVID, right? So most of these people, if they kept their position, have been working from home. And so now that they're starting to go back, they're like, I don't want to go back. Like, Kim, how do I do this? How do I set this up at home? But I have kids there and we're trying to figure out the timing, and they get home at 2 or 3. And so it's like, okay, we got to set up a plan to juggle. But what I'm seeing is that so many of them are procrastinating or getting caught up in, I can't do it all, like that victim, or trying to be perfectionist about it. And so how do you think, like, what would you say to people that are trying to kind of come into that and go, look, I'm starting a business, I'm going to work from home because I'm not going back. First of all, what would you say to people so that they start to believe in themselves, so they don't have to go back, that they can actually start doing their own thing at home, and how they're going to juggle it?
Yeah. So 2 things come to mind. One is that anyone, and this is so empowering because it doesn't require us dealing with our emotions, but anyone who is doing anything new should understand that they are not wired to do new things. So working in a different environment, using a different medium, selling through a different social channel, putting themselves out there in a different way. Those are massive triggers, and they are subtle, because it's not that you're like, what's the big deal? I can do this, but they're very sneaky and subtle. And so when you feel, whether it's fear or procrastination, you have to be able to recognize right away that that is a reaction to something that you may not be aware of. And that's what's really hard. So, polyvagal theory kind of changed my life because I studied a lot. Again, I wanted to understand my daughter, and there's a lot of stuff with infancy there. And one thing that really, really stood out for me is that we all hear about fight or flight, but there's also freeze. And it's as a protection. And so when you think about procrastination, indecision, throwing your hands up and saying, I'll just do nothing. Basically, that is, possums in nature play dead. So that is a way to protect yourself. And what's so interesting about that is that the second that you procrastinate, or the second that you are in that place, you might not in that time be able to, again, if you are being triggered, you are not accessing the thinking part of your brain that knows what you should do.
Right.
But if you recognize the signs, then you can circumvent the whole process by planning ahead. So if I'll use an example of, since we have moms again. So a lot of moms will blow up at their kids and then feel really guilty about it, and the whole thing is, and so, I really love to practice this stuff in stuff that will happen. So if you are always getting triggered around 5 o'clock because around dinner time you're exhausted, no one helps, no one cleans up, you didn't get a darn thing done all day, you're feeling guilty about that. If you're always triggered during that time, and that you lash out at your kids, or that you act in a way, how many times do we scream at our kids to stop yelling?
Yeah.
I mean, it's so pathetic. Like, And my kids call me out on it. I'd be like,
you're screaming.
Yeah. I'm like, why are you talking? They're like, look who you're talking. I'm like, good point. And so.
Well, at least you recognize that. Good point. I'm like, don't tell me that.
Oh yeah, I have to, because I'm like YouTube university to my kids.
Yeah.
So, but this is what I like to do. I like to plan in the moment now when we're all the parts of our brain that we want lit up. This is when you plan, not when you're all pissed off. So, one thing that I'll tell moms to do is, here's your dinner table, and back there is the wall that you always like look at to slam down. Put a clipboard up.
Yeah.
Just have it up there. And then when you start to get upset, you see the clipboard, you walk over and you just start writing something. And I actually, the first step, I have people have something on there that they read, so they don't even have a chance to think, because once you start to think, you're done. You have to go into autopilot until you can get yourself back online. Just like the banana.
It's redirecting. It's just like we teach kids to redirect our kids. It's, in a sense, we're redirecting our own thoughts.
Exactly. And so I'll have them go up there with a note card and just read on that note card, say, mommy's very upset right now. It's not okay what's going on. However, I'm going to write this down. And when we feel better, when everyone feels better, when we're back online. So you're also teaching your kids, which is amazing. So you're doing a couple things. You're activating the language centers of your brain, which by definition they will pull bandwidth from the rage centers, the emotional centers, and you're role modeling for them. And you're creating, like, how amazing would that have been if you were 13 rather than going in your room and slamming the door and then not loud enough, slam, 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 like 3 times or whatever you did. I did that, still do. I could intercept it and be like, okay, I'm really not feeling well right now, but nobody can talk. When, the almond in our brain, depends how old your kids are. I'm like, but I tell them about the amygdala. I'm like, nobody can talk when we're this upset. So we'll take a break and then we'll come back, and starting to, because what that does is it starts to rewire. It's because we are so, like Tony says, we have a highway to depression, anxiety, stress, and a dirt road to everything we want.
Yeah. Which is, that boggles my mind, because it's like, we come into this world and we have all these abilities, right? We have these innate talents. We have these God-given talents that are given to us. And I believe that if we have a desire, we have the ability to create that desire, to bring it to fruition. And we have a right. I do believe we have a right to do that, because I don't believe in a vindictive universe or God. I believe that it's there for a reason. And so it's almost like what you said early on. It's like, just find your passion, your purpose, and you'll be able to do it. And like, I shared before, I went to a clarity coach and she's like, you know exactly what you want to do. It's right there. And I'm like, okay.
You're like,
why don't you
just tell me?
I did have an idea, but I was like afraid to voice it and do it, because whatever, right? You look around, you go, but she's got more credentials, or she's done this. And I'm like, so it took me a while. Like, I put off stuff for a while, right? And I think a lot of us do that. But I think that, why does it, I've always asked is, why does it, because my background is, I owned a personal development franchise years ago and trained with some great, manifestors and coaches and things. And I always thought, why is it that has to be so difficult, that we know what we don't want, but it's oftentimes harder for us to voice what we want? And is it because we're concerned about what other people's opinions are? Is it because there's a part of us that's going, oh no, that, save, that little 5-year-old doesn't want to get embarrassed again. Remember when that happened? And I think what you're sharing is like, these are some ways to shift yourself out of that.
Mm-hmm. It's all of the above. And that's why I love keeping top of mind that freeze is very much a defense mechanism. I don't know what I want to do. I mean, I don't know is one of the ways that my ego manifests. I don't know. I'll call a psychic. I'll call a manifestor. I'll call it this. I'll call it that. I don't know. And what I think is really important about understanding that you might not know why you're doing it, but you can recognize when you are in ego. So if you are coming from lack, scarcity, doubt, less than, not enough, ego, you don't need to figure it out. You're an ego. And just by knowing that and doing something that you decide, you start to make that pathway, that one-way street that you've been taking forever, you start to make that less available, because it's just, you start to create a new pattern. So a lot of times I'll say to someone, like, you feel that procrastination come, or you feel, just get on the floor and do 10 push-ups. Like, no, that's not going to get you towards your whatever, like figuring out your life's purpose. But what it will do is it will say, it's a way of saying, okay, for some reason, someone inside of me, somewhere inside of me, I am feeling threatened. I am on the case. Ego, love you to death. I am on the case. I'm going to figure this out. I am in charge now. And I don't know what that is, but I promise I'm going to work on it. But I'm going to make a decision that I make a decision to do. You know, if every time you procrastinated, you did 10 push-ups, that would be a good thing. You know,
yeah, you could really fit too in the process.
Yeah, exactly. You know,
But it is, you know, it's making a decision, but you're really talking about, it's a pattern interrupt. That's what it is. It's like a pattern interrupt, because the moment you can recognize that and shift that energy, it really does change the game, because otherwise it is so easy to get caught. I mean, I think we can spend years, and Linda talked about this in her interview. She spent 6 years just like going down this path and not knowing, blah, 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 blah. I'm trying to figure things out. And it's like, wait a minute, you know, you can change that, I think, very quickly.
Yeah. And I do think, you know, and I think a really great thing that I personally love is that even if you don't know the right answer or the right direction or what you should do, you know better than your ego. And the only reason that your ego continues to show up is because the adult version of you is not showing up. And so we tend to think that if I don't know what to do, then it's just like going to come and this and that. But recognizing, you know, I'll give you a really basic idea, a really basic example. You're walking down the street and you have like a mean thought about someone that's like, you don't even know them and you judge them. Mm-hmm. And what we're taught to do is, I'm not that kind of person. I'm not going to, if you're evolved and try, right. You know, we're taught to say, oh, I don't think that. I mean, you know, what? She's lovely. I'm going to pray for her, whatever, you know. But if you look at it from a different point of view, if you look at it from, for whatever reason, I went into protection mode and my ego thinks that judging this person is going to be helpful. Somewhere along the way that got filed, you know, 6, 7, 8, just like, you know, just opinions about people, opinions about religions, opinions about things, they get filed away. We try to, once we learn that that's not how you should think, we just reject it. We're like, no, don't think that way. No, don't think that way. And, you know, when my kid wants something, mommy, can you jump on the trampoline with me? Not right now. Not right now. She doesn't go in the other room and meditate and journal about it. She comes back madder and madder and madder and madder until she destroys this house if she doesn't get what she wants. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We think that by telling ourselves what we should do, the gig will be up, you know, because that's the ego. That's why people burn out. That's why you can be an incredible achiever and you can run on fear, adrenaline, competition until you can't. Mm-hmm. And so it's understanding those, like just being able to recognize it. Am I judging? Am I blaming? Am I anything negative? You don't even need to understand anything negative. It's an opportunity to activate the part of you that is just like hoping for a good day and not a bad day. And we all do it. Yeah. You wake up in a bad mood. Let me figure out why I'm in a bad mood today. Is it that time of month? Did I sleep badly? You know, maybe I didn't eat well. Who do I hate? Who bothers me? You know?
Yeah. Well, it's being kind to yourself. Mm-hmm. It's being kind to yourself and giving yourself, in a sense, permission to feel that way, because and to recognize that, because I mean, we're all human. Yes. So we're going to do those things, and we're going to, you know, I think especially as women, as trying to juggle many different things. And, you know, we have, I know for me, I had this idea of what being a mom is, and yet loving business as well, and trying to be present and trying
Right.
to do all these different roles, and
Right.
at some points hitting these breaking points. But for me, I had to also learn to give myself permission that it was okay to take a step back and to know that I'm not going to have everything perfect. It's not going to be all just it is what it is, and I'm going to have my moments where I'm just going to go, I need, like, and for me, it'd be like, I need a break. Like, I need to just let it out. And for me, if I want to talk loud or scream, I'll do it. It's like, because I need that energy to, like, I just need to, and then just say, okay, I'm good. I'm good now. I just
Right.
need to get that out. And I think it's like my kids know that it's been, if they have that, it's okay to go ahead and, get that out of your system. I remember
Oh,
when
yeah.
my youngest son was, oh my God, he was I think he was 4 at the time, and he had learned some very choice words. And so he came home and wanted to say those like crazy. And I was like, you know what? Go in the bathroom and have at it. And we shut the door, and his 3 siblings and myself sat outside, and we were cracking up because he's going at it. I mean, he's naming everything. And then he opens the door, looks at us, and I'm like, feel better? Shuts the door, goes back in and does it, again. And then we all left. We were like, whatever, we're just and it dissipated. All that energy, all of that just kind of went away. And I'm finding that, in building businesses, and I see this with so often with moms and building businesses, and in that juggle, I'm like, there's going to be days where you just have to walk away. Like, sometimes you just have to say, I'm not doing this. And I always tell people, when you start a business, create that. Obviously, you're going to create that vision. But if you say to me, I'm doing this because I want to be at home and present to my family, well, then you're not going to work 10-hour days, because that's not going to be realistic. So let's set up a schedule where you're working 4-hour days, or you're taking every Friday off, or you're taking the last week of every month off, because you can do it. But like you said, you have to, if you know it, and if you can plan for that. But if you don't know it, you're not going to plan for it. So then all this other stuff's going to come in the way and interfere, right? And just kind of go, oh, stop.
Yeah. The whole, I want to work from home to be present with my family, I think is dangerous.
Yeah.
To be honest, it's like what you said, it's because you're creating, and this is what we do with expectations in general. I sit here and I write a script. I write my whole movie.
Mhm.
And then I walk out there, and not only, like, no one even knows that they're in my movie, but I'm expecting them to do what I had planned. Like, don't you guys get it? I'm going to have this beautiful office, and when I want to take a break, I'm going to go out and be mom of the year, and like, that's just not how it works. So I do agree with you figuring out, but I actually think what's good is that you said a lot of them are coming over from corporate.
Yeah. Well, because they've been working from home since they've had all COVID, and they're
Right.
like,
So they actually might be able to do it. Like, that's, I think, makes it easier because they have
that structure.
they have the structure, they have someone, I mean, being an entrepreneur and, and having small kids here while you're writing the great American novel or whatever, I think is you have to be very clear, not with other people, because no one's going to change, but with yourself
Mm-hmm.
about the roles that you are now taking on, because you've now renegotiated the contracts with everybody. So if you're not going to sit down and get an agreement on everyone's side, then you are going to later be in a situation where you're blaming other people. And I say this with so much love. You should have seen the fit I had before this, because I couldn't make this setup work. And this is my husband. He loves this place, where he loves it here. And for me, it's like, I just want my desk and my setup and this and that, And so I am saying this with so much love, but it's just important to remember, because you get yourself into these situations, and everyone, especially women with their guys, a lot of times it's like, they're not supportive. They're not helpful. They don't believe in me. They make more money. So it's, so their job is more important. They think my job is a hobby. They say to me, why do you have to work? I'll get a babysitter, or go get an office, so So it's just really important to be ready for those so that you can realize in those moments, like you're renegotiating this whole contract. Nobody has talked about it, and your ego is going to come in to protect you. And in all those ways that I just said.
And start to sabotage, in a sense.
Pardon?
Start to sabotage what
Everything.
you're trying to do. So, and I love that you say that it's really, you have to be really clear on what the roles are, and you have to kind of negotiate that up front. I think that's so important to be able to say, you know what, I'm now working from home, or I'm starting my business, and I only have, my bandwidth is only so far. I have to be able to do this. So between this hour and this hour, or whatever that block of time is, no one interrupts me. Unless there's a fire. I used to always say, unless there's a fire or someone is dying or choking, like hands off until whatever it was, 3 o'clock or something, because in a sense, that enabled me to set that deadline for myself, that it was like, okay, I don't get to procrastinate right now because, man, I only have this much time. Like what I find, and I tell people, is like, people that do have all these other responsibilities, young kids at home, or they're homeschooling, whatever it may be, you know what, you almost get more done because you condense that time right into that area, and you think, I only have this much, man, I got to be sharp. I got to be both and on. But you have to recognize, like you said, when something creeps up, you kind of have to nip it in the bud right away.
Yeah. And I bet that's where you help people a lot, because what happens if you don't work with a coach, or you don't have this, that's why I was saying two people that are in corporate world have that structure, because what happens is people, again, that freeze protection mechanism, that we sit down, we wake up early, this and that, and we sit down and we're like, okay, what should I do now? Yeah. Your ego is already there. You're doing something new. You're now working from home. Self-doubt has creeped in, and you don't have access to the part of your brain that is going to get you off to the races for the day. And so what I tell people to do is will delete half of something that they did and come back and have that on their computer. That's the first thing they do in the morning, just so that they can finish. I think it was Ernest Hemingway that would do that. He would delete like half of a sentence. And so when he would sit down the next day, he would complete the sentence and keep writing. I don't know if it was him or someone else, but it was someone like that. And the reason for that is because what we want to do is we want to go into action mode before we go into freeze mode, before there's time to say, well, I don't really know what to do. Should I, I really should organize the kids' room, because if that's organized, then they won't bother me. And I really should set out, something for lunch, or if they have snacks. Procrastination, that all of those things. But if you plan ahead when your thinking brain is online, then you're able to circumvent the process. Nobody needs to come in to protect you, because you're just doing what you need to do.
I love that. I love that idea of kind of deleting something, and so that you have something to walk into the next day, because we can set up our plans and our specific action steps, but sometimes you still come in, you go, oh, and I've got some peace. I got a little bit quiet. It's mommy time now. And then it's like, oh, and then you start surfing the internet and you start doing these other things. And all of a sudden you're like, okay, really, did I need to be on Amazon buying stuff right now?
Totally.
You're not getting the things done that you need to get done. And then you go, okay, did I have a productive day? And then no. And so then it's like you build this cycle, right? The frustration starts to cycle, and you're like, oh my God, how am I going to get back on track? Then you have to go back into it. So I love that. I think that's key. If you just delete whatever it is you're working on, or a portion of it, right? And then you come in the next day and you go, boom. Also, I think that helps because you come in with fresh eyes. How many times have you started a project and then you're like, pfft, and then you come in the next day and you're like, bam, right?
Yeah.
It's
always.
Like, you're in go mode.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, okay, that's going to take over, and I can start building that momentum, which is, I think it's huge. I see so often that, it just still boggles me that self-sabotage still kind of creeps up, and that it has a way of coming in, and it can be so subtle. Like you said, it's the procrastination, because I think what we do is we justify. It's so easy to say,
Oh yeah.
okay, if I have an organized office and everything's clean and neat, I'll go to the store and I'll get the pads I need, I'll get the new printer or right. And like it's a good, it's ego, right? It's got to be where we're
It
just
is.
justifying it.
Yeah. And that's why, again, like, you realize ego is freaking clever. We think that just because now we know what we want to do, I mean, it's been showing up on time for 30, 40, whatever, how many years. And it's not going to go away because you set out an intention for the day. It can only go away in two ways, either by hitting it head on, which is not that recommended because it's, what we were talking about before, or it's circumventing it. So if you don't get yourself into so nothing gets triggered because you're like, now what do I do?
Yeah.
That's a trigger somewhere. You're not smart enough. You're
Yeah.
Whoever was right. Like, who do you think you are to do this? Like,
Yeah.
I work a lot with coaches too, where they're like, all of a sudden it's like, who are you to coach someone? You don't even do your own stuff or whatever it is. All of that is, and so it's being able to anticipate that and plan accordingly, whether it's, deleting something or it's setting out what you're going to do ahead of time. Another thing is keeping a notepad close by. So when your ego is like, you know what, you really need to get some so for me, I'm terrible about really easy things like getting shampoo and conditioner for my girls. It's always every bath is going to happen every day. And every day I'm like, oh shoot, and so it's having a notepad. But then what I'll do is I'll go on and then I'm like, I really should find something that's organic and no chemicals. What was that app again? Oh, now I'm going to download Think Dirty. And now I'm going to go to Thrive. Do I have an account? Do I not have an account? I go down the rabbit hole to figure out my password. It's really knowing that will happen, but giving it a place. So if you have a notepad, I have something on here that I just have a list of mindless tasks, and I just put it there. So I can do that when I'm also doing something I shouldn't do, which is be on my phone in my bed. I can do that instead of looking at Instagram,
Yeah. I love that. I love the mindless task list because I think you're right. It's easy to just go, oh, okay, I'm going to write this down. And then you go, it's so easy to get distracted and to start going down that rabbit hole. And then at the end of the day, honestly, it's not the end of the day. It's not even the end of the week or the months. It's years. And you're like, oh. Well, yeah, but it's true though. It's kind of like, okay, still haven't done this. Why am I not doing this? And then you kind of have that heart, it's you have that kind of that come to Jesus moment going, what the hell? What am I really doing? And why am I playing this game? And how long am I going to continue that? And so it's really to set up some kind of pattern interrupt, to stop and redirect so that you don't do that. So that it's why, how often I've worked with people where it's oh my God, we started setting up your website and your business how long ago? And instead they're going on to get more degrees and more credentials and more degrees. How many people do you know like that? And it's how many credentials, right? Yeah. Well, it's true. I mean, listen, when I first started my business, and I tell people this all the time, man, I was in research mode. I was constantly research. I was learning and learning, but I wasn't earning. So I call it the learning but not earning mode. And I think it's so easy to do because we start going down that rabbit hole and we go, oh my God, I don't know this. I need to know this. I need to know this. And I finally got to a point where I gave myself permission to just say, you know what, show up. It's okay to get it messy, but just show up, because I knew my trigger was being a perfectionist. I just knew it was my background. I was magna cum laude. I was in documentaries and I did all that. So it's you're polished and you show up and, you're this new person, right? So that. And it was okay. And I had to finally just go, who cares? I was watching all these other people and going, man, she's making so much progress. And then I started thinking, because she's just her and it's okay. And I started going, wow. And honestly, I think it was my kids that really kind of helped me get permission to give myself that and to go forward and say, you don't have to be this perfect person. It doesn't matter. In fact, even for the promotions for this, you probably saw it. I sent out something that had a watermark on it. And I'm like, Oh my God, I should recall all that. And I'm like, you know what? Who cares? It is what it is. I recorrected it, but I'm like, you know what? It doesn't matter, because the truth of the matter is the information out there? Yeah. Does people get it? Yeah. So, all right, that's just, we're human. And sometimes doing things so fast, it's just, I've found that just by doing that and sometimes saying it's okay to get it messy, it's enabled me to move forward
Right.
faster and not get stuck in, like you say, the triggers, the ego, that just squashes everything we're trying to do.
Yeah, 100%. Because again, when you go to judgment, when you go to blame, when you go to comparison, even if it's good comparison, when you go there, it's almost like you cut yourself off. And that's something that really helped me, was the second I start to, whether it's an interview or it's even just talking to someone about a potential, potential position or a speaker gig or whatever, even if I'm judging them, where I'm like, oh, this is going to be a waste of time. If I go there, my ego's there. I'm cut off from being able to see, to being able to provide what is necessary for whoever is there, because I'm thinking that I know, and I'm inserting myself in the process rather than just letting it flow through me.
Yeah. That's a great point, because it's so that's a great point, because it's stepping aside and allowing that process and allowing it to go through you, because you don't always know. Like when I talked to that clarity coach, I was so caught up in the how, because it was like, yeah, I might have an idea, but it was like, I needed to know how I was going to get there, because I'm a little analytical, right? Little control, little analytical, and I was like, I wanted to know ABC. What are my steps to get me there? Because I was conditioned that way. And I have an event production company, right? So I'm like, it's logistics. It's like, we do this, this, and this. And that just, it served no purpose.
But I do think, and I so identify with that, because if you read one of my bios, I mean, how many times have I rewritten these things? But I say, like, I'm the coach that will tell you exactly what to do until you can do it for yourself. And people, when I say to coaches, tell me exactly what to do, they're like, well, you have to, I mean, that just shows me that you're this and that. And I'm like, no, what it means is that I am in my own way right now, and I can't see the path. This is not, just like I said at the beginning of this interview, I learned all of that because it wasn't about me. I was learning about it because I needed to solve a problem in my home. I would take my kids to school. It was chaos. I'd sit in my car and cry. And then I'd go to my office and be like, another day, what are we going to discover today? It was like a murder mystery I was trying to figure out, and why? Because it wasn't about me. And so my ego didn't come to paralyze me. Obviously, when you're talking to that clarity coach, that she's not smarter than you, or maybe whatever, maybe she is, but that's not what's holding you back. What's holding you back is that you're paralyzed. You're paralyzed. So you're like, no, literally, I want you to tell me, like, put one foot here, the other foot there. And once you get the wind at your back, then you can start to see everything. But if you can't even take that first step, and I think so many women, because we're, always changing careers. And a lot of us have been brought up to think that, like, if we don't know exactly what path we're on, then we're lost.
Yeah.
We hear reinvention all the time.
Know right out the gate. It's like, okay.
How the heck should I know?
The other thing is too, we have so many different things that we're interested in. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that. And you can build something from that and build it into many different areas as well. That's where I was getting tripped up. It was like, but I have so many different things and I couldn't, and it's finding the right person too, though, that will look at you and say, okay, I'm going to tell you what to do, and then you take action on that, right? If you're not taking action, it's a whole different story. But I love this conversation. I love that you really clarified that, it's kind of a pattern interrupt. Look at those triggers, know it's your ego, know what what's not working there, and how to kind of just stop and take it in and go, okay, now what am I going to do here? I absolutely love that, because I think it's so important if you're really trying to move forward in building a business and juggling the responsibilities that, look, it's life. You're going to have those responsibilities. So that's just it. You're not going to be able to walk away from that. So I love this conversation. Thank you. I know that I want to mention, because Carrie's putting it into the chat right now, you're doing free coaching, right? You've got a 30-minute coaching session that you're giving to people.
Yes.
Okay.
That's right. So we'll do maybe the first 5 people who send me your email.
Yeah.
And we can do some free 30-minute get you on the right path and excited no matter where you are. And guess what? You don't need to have a why. Yeah. You don't need to have a why. You don't need to know your purpose. You can
That's
still
refreshing, because I think that trips so many people up. And it's like, you know what? You'll get to that point at some point. Let's just,
but you're not going to get to it. I mean, you're not, everyone's different. But for me, it was like, if I do one more freaking exercise from like, what color is your parachute, to like the dean of my MBA like program sitting down with me with his exercise, sometimes you just got to get moving. You're not going to.
Action creates that clarity. And I think it's so important. And it may be imperfect action. It doesn't matter. It starts to push you on that path. And that's the thing that helps us to get out of that head that, that trips us up, that other inner voice.
Yep, so, exactly. Two of my favorite things, and then I'll let you go. I have we're on the hour, but is 2 things that I've just juxtaposed recently, which I love. And one is the metaphor about the fog, that you have to drive a little more to see a little more, and drive a little more to see a little more. You can't just sit there. If you're driving, you're going to go really slow, but then you see a little more and really slow. And the other one is when you're going on a plank, like crossing a river or something like that, even if you have to step on the plank and know that the other plank will appear when you need it.
Yeah.
And so I love that one, because it's more for those of us that are so afraid of taking imperfect action. And so again, back to my freeze, that just knowing that it is something that is happening in our brain that makes us do nothing, sit home with all of our talent. Yeah. And just understanding that you can get on a plank and it might not look good, but like, you're not going to see the other one until you get on there.
Until you get going. Exactly. Exactly. I love that. I like both of those. That's great. Thank you so much for being here. Again, the link is in the chat notes as well, so you can connect, and the first 5 that actually send an email and get on the calendar will be able to get a coaching session, a 30-minute. I think we're doing a 30-minute coaching session, right? So what you're offering? Yeah. I love that.
Allocate a little longer, but it's 30 to 40 minutes, whatever.
Perfect. Perfect. I love that so much. Thank you. I'm so glad we connected. Glad we connected on Clubhouse, and I love that app. I'm so glad that we're, that's around. It seems a little off, but I love it, and I love how it's working. So thank you for being here. I truly appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Take care.
I'm out of your vacation.